Good morning, everybody. These celebrities draw big crowds. I know it's not me. My name's Jim Lighthizer, and it is my very good fortune to be president of the Civil War Preservation Trust. And I'm basically a prop today, but one of my purposes, in addition to being a prop, is to welcome you to the 9th annual 10 Most Endangered Battlefield list presentations. As many of you who have been here before know, we've been doing this for 9 years, and the purpose of the 10 Most Endangered Battlefield list being published is to draw national attention to the plight of one of America's most important heritage resources, and that is the Civil War battlefields. Many of you have heard me talk before about how we lose something like an acre of core battlefield of the 384 most significant every single hour of every day, some 10,000 acres a year. And even with the current economic climate, that continues apace. Another reason we do this is to raise America's awareness about not only preserving America's past, but in another sense, preserving America's future. Because as someone once said, if you don't know where you've been, it's hard to know where you're going. And as to the question of why we preserve battlefields, well, there's a variety of reasons. First and foremost, in my opinion, is that the Civil War was a defining time in American history. It settled two questions for all time. Could a state secede from the Union? A huge, huge question. And the second, of course, could one man own another man? An equally huge, debatable question at that time in American history. And from that has come the United States of America as we know it today. But it would not be as we know it today had we not gone through that crucible of fire. And of course, we paid a terrific price for that. 2% of all the Americans who were alive in the 1860 census, some 624,000, almost all young men, died in that conflict. We paid a terrible price. Some 50,000 civilians, it's estimated, died in that conflict. And of course, it tore this country apart. So it was a defining time in American history. And of course, the issue was settled on the battlefield. It was not settled in the halls of Congress or some building or some place other than those battlefields. So that's, at least from my perspective, the single most important reason why we save the best evidence of a defining time in America, the battlefields. But there are other reasons as well. When you think about the homogenization of America, the kind of every town has become, in many respects, almost anywhere else. Whether it's the big boxes, whether it's the chains, whether it's the interstate highways, unless they have palm trees, it's hard to know where you are. And what a battlefield does, like any historic resource, but let's take a battlefield, it helps to define a community. It helps to make that community, if they're fortunate enough to have that kind of history, it makes them unique. It makes them special. And of course, if they properly save it and interpret it and promote it, it can also become an economic resource, a renewable economic engine by way of tourism. But it's more than that. It's also something called open space. And in much of this United States, we're becoming increasingly congested, particularly on the coasts. And open space is important. We've all seen concrete examples of how property values increase around permanently preserved open space. It's also green. It's ecologically correct, if you will, because open space, like battlefields, preserve water quality or enhance water quality. It does good things for the environment. And finally, America's battlefields are something that I think is very, very important, and it goes back to what I opened this talk on, and that is that they're outdoor classrooms. They're places where future generations can come and remember, but also learn. Learn about a defining time in American history and learn about the values that got us through that very, very difficult time, perhaps the most difficult times in American history. Things like honor and duty and sacrifice and heroism. And those battlefields, those outdoor classrooms, they teach that. One of the tragic messages from today, I hope will come out, that I hope comes out, is that even protected battlefields, even battlefields that are called national parks and have the sanction and the support sometimes of the United States government, even they can be threatened by outside forces. Let me give you an example. The wilderness is a partially preserved battlefield. It was a horrific battle with tremendous slaughter. And yet the Walmart Corporation proposes building a monstrosity of a big box on the battlefield, although it's not in the Park Service. And at the very least, it's going to denigrate that battlefield, and at the very worst, it's going to destroy part of it. So something even on the outside of land already preserved can be a serious threat. Another example is Monocacy, the so-called battle that saved Washington in 1864 in Frederick County, Virginia, or Maryland. There, a highway is proposed to be widened, and a highway goes right through the middle of that battlefield already. They're proposing to widen it. And the county is thinking about putting a waste incinerator off the Park Service boundaries, in fact, off the core battlefield. But it goes 200 or 300 feet in the air, it being the smokestack. It will seriously jeopardize that battlefield and the experience and the learning opportunity we have from that battlefield, not to mention the economic damage of hurting tourism. And one other example comes to mind. It's not a Civil War battle. It's called the Battle of New Orleans, which was fought in the War of 1812 and 1814. And, of course, American victory, and we celebrate it with Andrew Jackson, et cetera, et cetera. And if you've ever been to that battlefield, and I have, it's a wonderfully preserved battlefield, save one problem. It is surrounded by energy plants, gas plants, oil plants. I mean, it is hideous. Unless you wear blinders and look at the ground, the experience is substantially diminished. And it's because they didn't preserve the viewscape, the viewshed. So one thing I hope I leave you with is that the price of preservation of our historical resources really is eternal vigilance. Because not only must we save the land where the great events happened, but it is also to be able to save the land so that it can be seen in a context.